The PC Engine. This system was made in collaboration between Hudson Soft and the electronics company NEC. The system was a huge success in Japan and even managed to become a contender to Nintendo's own Famicom. A couple years later, the system was brought over to the US under the name TurboGrafx-16. It was a very promising machine, however it came out 2 weeks after the Sega Genesis, which sadly led to lukewarm sales of the system.
This is really a huge shame since I really fell in love with the console, especially since I got this last year. This is the PC Engine Duo R, the Japanese equivalent of the TurboGrafx-16, and is also able to play the CD-based games on it. And I'm so sad I missed on so many great and unique games on it. I wonder why the system flunked, which might be because of the marketing, but if you release a new system to the market and you wanna have a packing game that rivals Super Mario Bros., why on earth would you make it Keith Courage in Alpha Zones?
It is perhaps the most underwhelming game to introduce new buyers to your console. It baffles me that NEC had all those amazing great launch titles to bundle it with their console, but they settled on what might be their worst choice. On one fateful day, a meteor crashed on Earth revealing evil aliens. Those aliens want to take over the world and they work under the organization called the Beastly Alien Dudes. Yes, it spells bad. The aliens decide to have an underground fortress and it's up to our hero Keith to stop them in the name of the organization Nations of International Citizens of Earth. Oh really? I thought it was part of the Department of Universal Monster Busters, or Service to Unify People in Denmark. It's cool that we have a comic that explains the story, but it's rather generic and honestly I don't really care, so let's just move on. Keith Courage is divided into two different segments. First, in the Overworld, you play as regular Keith, and boy is he slow. I mean, it's hard to explain it by just looking at the game, but even when you press your thumb really hard on the D-pad, Keith seems to pace rather leisurely instead of run, which makes a lot of the movement very stiff. I don't really have that much to say about the Overworld since there's almost no platforms or obstacles, but I would like to mention the fire zone in which you can walk on lava and not die from it for some unbeknownst reason. So even though our main protagonist is suffering from the Mega Man syndrome by dying instantly on spikes, when he steps on lava, everything is A-okay.
Oh yeah, and his puny sword sucks too.
Throughout the Overworlds, there are huts scattered in which you can get different services and advices from the various townsfolk. A lot of the time, the advices are in broken English and aren't that important. But in addition, you can also purchase some stuff like bombs, sword upgrades, and health restoration. More on that later.
At the end of each Overworld segment, there's an altar in which Keith can jump on, so you get teleported by a rainbow, because why not, so you can transform into a giant robot via the power of the Nova Suit. This marks the beginning of the Underworld segments, and Keith moves much faster there, as well as the sword becoming more effective. And that's all the good things I can say about it.
Unlike the Overworld, here the sword is much stronger and can deal with the stronger enemies like, this thing. Well, at least they got imagination. A major flaw in the game is that hovering enemies tend to follow the player around regardless of the position in the stage itself. A reasonable answer to the problem might be to just slash away, but enemies respawn fast, so staying in the same place can be a death wish, as enemies can rush you from all directions, making fighting them a chore rather than a legitimate challenge. However, the biggest issue in this game is jumping. It seems like a trend recently. Developers had an odd decision that if you press the opposite direction to where you jump, Keith will plummet straight down. It's really strange how Keith gains a lot of height when he jumps, but not so much the distance, as there are jumps like this one here in which you hit the ceiling and find yourself losing a life to the spike pit. And when you die, guess what? It's all the way back to the beginning of the level. However, on the positive side, at least you have unlimited continues, which is nice, but it does involve a lot of trial and error, unfortunately. The camera in the Underworld sections does an awful job of showing what's below your character, and many times you have to gamble only to find yourself dead due to spikes that couldn't be avoided without proper clairvoyance.
Getting stuff from the shops might be a good idea on paper if it was actually implemented correctly. The bombs, for example, do squat. They may have better range than the sword, but they're much weaker, especially since you can get close to an enemy, attack repeatedly, and get much better results. They also deplete rather fast, so you're wasting all your hard-earned money for nothing.
Thankfully, investing money in your sword is definitely helpful since you can extend its reach. However, the last few swords in the game are very expensive, and the only way to get money is to hope that enemies will actually drop some. The most money you can get is from those, dive-bombing cats? Looks like we have the Meowth Kamikaze Squad. In most of the cases, you won't even get money at all, so you have to keep grinding on, and I didn't expect to do that in a platformer.
If you think that's bad, check the value for the last Alpha Sword upgrade. Really apologize for this joke, but,
It's over 9,000!
Oh, by the way, another milestone. Thanks, guys, you're the best. And I had to spend a whole 20 minutes just to get enough money to buy the final sword of the game. But you know what the real issue is? When you die, you lose half of your money. The only thing that's gonna be grinded more than your time in this game is your gears. Nurse Nancy can heal your health completely, but here's the kicker. Why do that when in the Underworld you can not only connect hearts to replenish your health a bit, but also collect sound to replenish all of your health and even add an extra hit? Why spend that money when you can save up for a sword upgrade? This game has so many great ideas, but it's a shame so many of them fall flat on their face.
And I really don't want to talk about the bosses in this game because they're so pathetic. So pathetic, in fact, they become regular enemies in the later levels.
The final boss is tough, however, but because I don't care anymore, I exploited a glitch since I want this to be over with. Hooray! I beat the game! And I got a seizure-inducing screen that I'm gonna slow down just so I can save you guys a headache. It also makes me realize the kid on top of the mountain here looks different than the Keith on the cover art. And there's a reason for that.
It turns out that in Japan, this is actually an anime tie-in to Mashin Eiden Wataru, an anime in which a young boy is transported to a magical world in which he needs to save with the help of a big robot and also an equally big sword, because Japan. And it looks pretty charming, especially since how many of the anime characters ended up in the game, except for the bear dude. I really want to know who the bear dude is.
I will at least admit that the game looks nice, even though the Underworld levels look a bit redundant after a while, and the Overworld levels are simplistic, at least it looks okay. Same with the soundtrack, it's nowhere near bad, it's actually the best part about the game, but even that is bland. It's so bland I'm just gonna go to the final cut. On the positive side, while it can be redundant, the graphics in the game are pretty colorful and detailed, and the music is pretty entertaining for what it is. On the negative side, the controls are incredibly stiff, especially in the Overworld stages. The grinding to get some of the best items in the game is incredibly taxing, and despite the infinite continues, it's still really frustrating. I hope you like Spike Pits.
Make no mistake, guys. Keith Courage in Alpha Zones is a bad game, but you know what the worst part about it is? This is one of the cheapest and easiest to find games for the system. The TurboGrafx 16 in general is one of the most arduous systems to collect games for, since many of them are expensive and hard to find. Magical Chase, anyone? So, some of you might be tempted into getting into the whole collecting scene of the TurboGrafx 16 and might be enticed by this game's price tag, but I would highly recommend just save up your hard-earned cash to get one of the many better games on the system. Well, this is all for me, and I actually have a ride that I need to catch, so I'll see you guys later. Take care.
Thanks again for watching, guys, and I want to give a very special thanks to the person who composed this awesome new theme song of mine, Brimaxian. You probably know him from composing the GameSack theme too. Now you can do me all an awesome favor and check his page out. He has fantastic music, and I implore you to support him on Bandcamp and check him out. I know I did so. Also, for those who want to know more about the TurboGrafx 16, one of the videos featured here is by Classic Gamer Quarterly, which he talked about every single game of the launch of the TurboGrafx 16. Anyway, like, subscribe, do all the stuff that people say at the end of videos, and as always, take care.